We set a time limit. They had 7 minutes.
7 minutes.
7 minutes. So if you're not able to clearly articulate the problem, how you're solving it, and the growth or efficiency that will come from it in 7 minutes, I'm not quite sure there's really something there.
The Playbook. It is the how Allie Carey increased decision speed at SEI by X% in Y amount of time, and we have a blank canvas.
Okay.
Where do they start? How do they bring the right stakeholders together, and what are their roles?
So before we get to the stakeholders, I think the key thing that was a real crux for us in diving in here and moving this forward was a realization that
How do you align everybody successfully from the top down to get excited about this, get past their fears of doing something new?
this is where my role was really crucial, in the business, basically saying,
Let's talk about the pipelines. How many fundable ideas are you trying to generate per year?
so we want to try and run 3 experiments a year. And that's for a couple reasons, right? It's obviously
Ali, thank you for being here. I'm really excited to have this conversation and build a live playbook with you, which I say with a maybe silly smirk on my face because it is a bit of a new thing that we're trying. But great to have you here. Really want to dig into your role at SEI and the transformation that you've, I would say, I'm not putting words in your mouth, but, that you've taken the company through to focus on building new ideas and new ventures in some form of repeatable, scalable way. And that's really ultimately what the playbook's going to be about. But we'll start a little bit at the beginning. Tell us a little bit about SEI and your role as the Chief Strategy Officer.
Yeah. Ben, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here. So at SEI, I'm responsible for outlining the growth strategy for our banking and wealth management business. And what we do at SEI is we deliver financial technology for investment processing, outsourced operations, and asset management to really the largest players in the industry and across the globe. So we work with 8 of the top 20 banks in the US and 48 of the top 100 investment managers globally. And we were founded in 1968. Our founder and our chairman of the board still was an innovator of himself. He really created the first fintech before fintech was even a known noun. And built the first P&I, custody system for trust bank wealth managers, and grew the business from there. So we have 4 main businesses inside of SEI. As I mentioned, I work in our banking business, which is the business that really built SEI. But we serve RIAs, delivering asset management technology and ops to RIAs and independent broker-dealer affiliated advisors, as well as the investment managers and doing fund accounting on their behalf, both in the public and private market, as well as institutional businesses and delivering outsourced CIO services there. So a wide array of clientele across financial services. I like to say that Wall Street runs through Oaks, Pennsylvania, and most of the world doesn't know. But it's an exciting place to be, one that has a history of innovation. And as you mentioned, when I came into this role about 3 years ago, we really wanted to reignite that key tenet of the culture so that we could achieve the goals that were set out for us.
Right. Now, I think, Ali, you used the term growth innovation. So maybe what does that mean? And I use the term build new ventures. So we're kind of circling around what you're doing and maybe what was going on before and now coming back in and saying, wait a second, where are these new places we can grow, new things that we could build? So maybe just in your words, how do you and how does SEI think about this idea of growth innovation through venture building?
Yeah. So we really like to think about it in three horizons. And so the first horizon is really focused in on the core of our business, right? So that core investment processing, custody, outsourced operations for both wealth and asset managers. And what are the different ways in which we can enhance those services and iterate and innovate on the core, quite honestly, right? And as we all are aware, there are some really rapid things coming our way, whether that be blockchain and tokenization, or even regulatory changes that we're starting to see across the globe. So our core in and of itself is being
There's a
um,
lot to do. There's a lot to
right.
do.
We can
Yeah.
really innovate there. Um, where I operate is really horizon 2. So this is looking 3 to 5, and then horizon 3, which is that blue sky kind of frontier, 5 to 7 years out. And this is where, when I'm talking to our teams internally, it's how do we use the core that we have built to process, nearly $7 trillion in assets across the globe, to innovate and create new business models, penetrate new client segments, and really extend the reach of SEI. Having a core that's strong and foundational to the industry that we do, and the connectivity that we have to the entire industry, really sets us up to create what you're talking about, Ben, that new venture side of it. Um, I work inside one of our businesses, and when Ryan Hickey took over as our CEO from Al West, our founder, in 2022, he too really saw the opportunity that SEI has to leverage our core capabilities and the connective relationships we have. So this was really from the top down, a change in leaning into innovation and being able to build new ventures, not only with my role from a strategy perspective, but also bringing in a woman by the name of Sneha Shah to really lead even further out across the entire company, where we can be innovating and where we can be learning now, so that we can, do new businesses, bring businesses together that maybe haven't been seen as synergistic in the past, but could be in the future.
So fair to say then that SEI, very successful company, not focused on that horizon 2 and horizon 3. Before you sort of came in, new CEO comes in and says, folks, we have all these assets, we have this platform to build off of. This thing is successful. Where is the next, pick a number, $1 billion going to come from? How could we go acquire other types of customers? So you come in and say, okay, core, keep doing what you're doing. You're crushing it. Me as Allie and a couple of other folks, of course, we got to go figure out what's next.
Exactly. And with that culture change, Ben, comes the kind of like the core looking at you, being like, what are they doing? Right? And how do you, and really a lot of the first year of what we were doing was building those relationships around, when we get to 2 years out, and you're looking at your roadmaps core, you're going to have a lot more definition, transparency, and knowledge about where the market's going and what the market needs because of the work we've done. We're doing experiments here where we can say, let's not invest any money over here. So we're saving things longer term. So it was really starting to create that symbiotic relationship between the core and, the new, and the horizon 2, 3 venture, whatever you want to call it.
Right. So let's work backwards a little bit. Where are you today, success wise, process, or not process, but progress wise? How many ventures have been built? You just said that the first year socializing this, getting the core comfortable. The core is like, what are we spending money on here exactly? What's happening? So where are we today? Because it sounds like it actually has been a 3-year journey to get to where you are now. And I know there are success stories. I'm sure a lot of learnings, which we'll get to. But what's the sort of where you are right now? What does that look like? What has been achieved?
Yeah. So there's been a lot of achievement. There's been a lot of learning, and some would say we failed fast a few times over, right? I personally don't like fail fast. I think it's important that It's more about figuring out what we need to spend real big time money on, right? Period, full stop. It wasn't a failure if it didn't work out because we found out we shouldn't be spending money there. That is a success. That is an absolute success. So there's really 3 key successes, 3 years into the role that I'm really proud of. The first is the culture of experimentation we've been able to bring to SEI as an enterprise. And it really started with the realization of we're not going to be successful in doing new things if the entire employee base is not excited about generating ideas and leaning into these new things.
Right. Even in
Because
the core, right,
even in the
Allie?
core,
Yeah.
because
Okay.
we need that expertise. That's one of our differentiators when it comes to building new businesses or new solutions. Many don't have the expertise across the industry that we have here at SEI. So engaging the core in the process and really bringing them into the fold in a way that doesn't feel too heavy. So we have, and we did it in a really small way first inside of the banking business, where it was as simple as a contest, Ben. We put a big money prize because we wanted big ideas.
Okay. How big
And
a money? Hold on. How big a money
tens of
prize?
thousands, I'll say. How about that?
Not to go to an individual's pocket, but to go to fund an idea,
To go to a team
to go to a
as
team.
a prize for the idea.
Okay. Okay.
Um, we wanted big ideas. We had big goals, and we knew we weren't going to get there doing what we do in the core solely.
Right.
So it started at the top with getting executive buy-in to really creating that culture and rewarding that culture for putting yourself out there. So we went from 0 real ideas that could be executed on to over 30. And it was as simple as holding a few sessions to make sure that anybody and everybody could join and learn the strategy, make sure they had deep understanding of the strategy. And we broke it into 2 categories: efficiency and growth. And the efficiency needed to prove you could have a $250,000 savings, and the growth needed to be $1 million in revenue or more.
Okay. In what time frame was the what
In
did
a
you set for?
year.
In a year. Okay. Okay. Very
So
cool.
big company, longer time frames.
Yeah. No, of course. I'm always curious when people set the target. It's like
Yeah,
$1 million when? Tomorrow, 10 years from now?
right.
So you said 12 months.
So what was wonderful about that, and what we started there, wasn't necessarily the ideas and the number of ideas. It was the participation and getting everyone in the enterprise the opportunity, providing them the space to start to think in an innovative way outside of their day-to-day activity, and also really bringing that commercial mindedness to the process, which I grew up, coming through operations. That's not in the front of your mind every day. So reorienting, the hundreds of people around that commercial mindedness was a huge success. So culture of ideas, culture of putting yourself out there, thinking differently, and rewarding that. Success 1. The second success was actually doing experiments.
Yeah. Yeah, because you said fail fast, and then said I don't like to say fail fast because I've never in the history of working with any corporate partner heard them say we love failing. We're big fans. Now we can rebrand it as learning, but they still think of it a little bit like failing. So
Yeah, so this is again where executive leadership and really that top-down air cover matters, right? And then it's really laying out the risk parameters and agreeing around what risks are we willing to take, whether that's financially. Opportunity cost is a big thing. So if I'm working with folks on an experiment, that means they're not necessarily spending time over here. So that's a small opportunity cost trade-off, but there are others, right? Delivery, things of that nature. So it all comes around risk and what risks are we willing to take. So once you get alignment on that, pulling the team together and letting them go, right? And just using processes that are well accepted inside of the organization around project management and applying them to the experiment. So it brings that familiarity that, okay, there's oversight here, there's transparency, there's checks,
It's not the
right?
Wild West.
You got it. You got it. And then we've had one experiment go to market, and we have clients using that solution now. We have revenue generating. We're still very early. I would say if you were to use a lean methodology, we're in the product market fit stage, but we have paying customers. And we're iterating on that. And so those are 3 successes in 3 years to have been able to really bring that forward. And now it's scaled across SEI in totality. We've had multiple more contests. We've had hundreds of ideas come through. It's all the seed planting, right, for that long-term bet.
What was the amount of time on the experimentation? How long was that roughly to then get one business out the door, funded, let's say, as a real product business line that's generating revenue? What was the time from that you afforded for experimentation?
Yeah. So in that contest, this idea came through. We narrowed the 30 ideas to 10, and they hit 5 for each category, and they did a Shark Tank pitch in front of judges. This particular idea won, and it was about 18 months. 18 months that team came together. We assessed. This was an interesting learning. The team that came up with the idea isn't necessarily the right team to execute the idea. And so managing that and getting to make sure we have the right team together, small, you have to keep it very small, to then go and really do the deep market research that a contest wouldn't allow for, and start to pull together the technology in this case, and then the implementation of that. It was about 18 months.
Okay. And then you 5 on each side, you pick 1 on each side, and then you're running experiments on basically 2 things. So what happens? Did one of them drop off? Did one of them survive and became the real business? Did they pivot along the way? Because ostensibly that's 2, it's 30 to 10 to 2. I'm mapping the funnel correctly. And then those 2 you chase for 18 months. One of them doesn't make it, one of them makes it. Is that about right?
That's about right. It's the other idea was an efficiency idea, so it wasn't necessarily a new business, but it was actually focused on efficiency around our recruiting, and how do we get faster, build a pipeline in certain parts of our organization where we can get faster onboarding with more highly qualified. And so that was a super interesting, very creative way to look at the challenge of save the organization $250,000 or more. So, I mean, it was like amazing what came through in these presentations. Now, that particular one, it's not that it necessarily dropped off, but there were definitely pivots along the way to ensure that the thing that came to was really that high quality talent, and where were we seeing that actually come through, and where were we not, and how do we pivot around?
Right. Got it. And so maybe just last question, then we will jump into this Playbook experience, which will be this borderline mayhem, but whatever, we'll figure it out.
That's how it always goes, though, right, Ben? It's always mayhem.
What are we going to do? We're going to try. Yeah, I mean, our lives are total mayhem all the time. But is it fair to say that by implementing this process, iterating through it, that you've sped up decision making, sped up innovate? I know innovation is such a broad term, but sped up the whole process from what was happening before, if anything. Is that fair to say that this systematizing this has sped this process up? Is that fair?
No, definitely, it's 100% fair. And the idea, the business that we have, which is really serving, the community bank space. There's 1,000 of them out there. Our platform wasn't fit for purpose for those banks. It now is, due to a multitude of reasons. But that particular idea had been spinning. It was one that would come up and would go away. It would come up, it would go away. No one spent enough time to really get to the next level down. So the fact that for years, it was up, it was down, and nothing ever happened to 18 months, now paying customers, definitely sped it up. And sometimes I say, like, I'm so blessed to have so many ideas that I can't move through the process,
Right. Right. Yeah. Too
whereas
much.
before we didn't.
Right. Yeah. So the constraint there might be the resourcing, not on the ideas anymore. The top of funnel is, you've got lots of interesting things. Now you have maybe a resource constraint on how do we move this stuff through the funnel into experimentation, into validation, into
You
commercialization.
got it. And it's
Yeah.
really all about making sure that the ideas are applicable to the strategic advantages and opportunities we see as an enterprise and as a business in the market. Some of them are phenomenal ideas, but just not ideas that we believe either we have a real right to win or it's that opportunity cost, right? We'd rather go experiment over here because it's just much more aligned with where we're taking the enterprise.
Yeah, makes total sense. I mean, we always, when we're looking at doing this work, we always think about the right to win, and do you have the assets you need that you can leverage in some, even if you're chasing new customers, like what assets do you have that affords you a chance at taking a swing at this business versus anybody else? So, okay, we're gonna run out of time if we don't jump into the playbook. So we're gonna jump into it. It is the how Allie Carey increased decision speed at SEI by X%. We'll figure out what X is in Y amount of time, building a pipeline of X fundable ideas per year. So that's the framing of it. If we're ready for that, I'm going to share my screen, set the stage, and we have a blank canvas. So we'll jump right
Okay.
into this, Allie. I've got 3 boxes at the top. One is around stakeholders, one is around success metrics, and one is around operating cadence. And then below that, what we're going to do is just try to map out this process. You've been on a 3-year journey. So I don't know if we can map out all 3 years in the next 20 minutes, but I think it's important to try to set the major milestones that you went through, and how long they took, and a couple of key points would be great. But uh, let's start with people. So if I zoom in, who are the people that you need at, if you think about, imagine somebody's watching this, listening to this and thinking, I want to build new ventures. I want to grow. I have things on a shelf somewhere that have been sitting there for a while, just like the community bank idea that you guys commercialized. Where do they start? How do they bring the right stakeholders together, and what are their roles?
Yeah. So before we get to the stakeholders, I think the key thing that was a real crux for us in diving in here and moving this forward was a realization that the core and what we're doing in the core was not going to get us to the growth goals that we had. So we have to do something differently. That's where we were sitting 3 years ago. We have to do new things. It's non-negotiable. Like we can't even pretend anymore. So
So
that
that's step
came,
one.
yeah,
That's step,
that is
right?
step one,
We have
right?
to agree this is true.
Exactly. Because if you don't have that agreement and that realization and really that coat like glue, it doesn't
Right.
matter who you have at the table.
Right. And
Um,
would you suggest that this is the realization in your case, or as you're thinking about this, where does it come from? Is it top down? Is it the bottom up? Is it both? Is it the CEO saying, guys, we're never going to make it if we have these goals, we're never going to make it if we keep doing what we're doing? Where does that come from usually?
yeah. So in my experience, it's not necessary. It's the CEO and the executive leadership setting high targets and having big ambitions for the company. Now, I'm fortunate to work in an organization that I'm not necessarily told you got to go do things differently, right? It's here's our big goals. How are we going to get there? Right. And in the how are we going to get there, it was we're going to have to do new stuff. And we work, in many markets. So we have so many different opportunities on where we can go do those things. But that realization was at the leadership level. But what we quickly realized is organizing and aligning the workforce around that understanding, like things need to be done differently, is 100% necessary, and it's hard.
Right. So let's just jump into that then, and we can come back after and probably pull the stakeholders out of this. So then we have to align everyone, right? Everyone's maybe a bit of an exaggeration, but in effect, we have to align everybody on what's going on. So um, again, if you say step one, CEO, executive leadership, say, these are our goals. Folks look around the table, say, how are we going to achieve those goals? And everybody's like, I don't know. And somebody says, we got to build new things and we got to grow. I like the way you articulated, Allie, new customers potentially, or existing customers with new value propositions. But ultimately, we need new revenue streams. Because that's the only way. We can't efficiency is awesome, but you can't save your way to winning. You have to grow your way to winning. Uh, so let's talk about step two then. How do you align everybody successfully from the top down to get excited about this, get past their fears of doing something new? What was that process like, and how long does it take?
Sure. So the first was, we need to do new stuff. So we have everybody kind of aligned. So we're not going to reach our targets doing this. Okay. So this is where my role was really crucial in the in the business, basically saying, here are those new things that are good opportunities for SEI, where we have a right to win because they're either already our clients or we already have the assets to do this. It's just piecing them together in a different way. And it's communicating that there is a path to get there, right? It's not amorphous so much anymore that it's, okay, we got to do new things. Everybody go scatter and do new things. I like to say, we're in Oaks, Pennsylvania, and we needed to get to LA. Now there's a zillion and a half ways you can drive, fly, take a train to LA. My job was really starting to lay out that map of how we would get there. And then it's bringing the workforce in as a contributor to fleshing out the detail, right? So that there's ownership at all levels of what that strategy and action or execution, could be, should be. And that's
Right.
where the contest came in, quite honestly, because it
Right.
was like, how do we engage everybody here?
Right. So that was sort of the idea that came out of it. It's like, cool, we got to grow. Allie, figure out how to do this. I know I'm paraphrasing for time.
No, yeah, of course.
And simplifying terribly, but we got to grow. We got to do new things. Allie, figure out how to do it. Start communicating with everybody that there is a way to do it. This is not, we're not, it's not an amorphous blob of crazy. We can figure this out. There are steps we can take. And then out of that comes the idea of running the contest.
That's it. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So let's do that, because not everybody will do it that way, but I think it's an interesting way of trying to tackle it. So I guess so I'm just going to write the contest here for a moment. But would you say that when you were going through this aligning everybody, did you identify that quality idea generation was the first roadblock to this?
Well, it was interesting because what I kept finding out was there were a lot of ideas. There were a ton of ideas, but there wasn't necessarily a facility for all those ideas to be heard and recognized.
Right.
And there wasn't a coaching or mentoring mechanism to help employees iterate on them. So the idea was a sentence and it was interesting, but you need more than a sentence. And when you're not, I grew up in product management building technology for RIAs. So when you're not in that world, it's very foreign. So what are those key questions you need to answer and things you need to know to kind of bring that to life? So that's where we came up with a one-page business plan template.
Okay. Right. I was going to ask you what work folks had to do before they presented. I know you said it was like a Shark Tank style pitch. I've seen many of those. Some are executed super well. Some are executed quite poorly, where people are just pitching random nonsense. And you kind of get to that. Those are all, and it's just, they weren't equipped with the information and the tools and the skills to figure out how to shape the idea. So I'm not blaming anybody. It's just sort of like, guys, that's not really what we were gunning for here. But it sounds like you did do a little bit of work in advance to say, before we do and run this contest and have this pitch, we're going to coach you and support you through the process.
Yeah. So I personally did multiple sessions with anyone that had an idea where I really ran through the business plans and I provided examples. And basically said, here's an example of what would be a good, robust one. And here's an example of where we'd be left thinking, we're not quite sure we get it.
Right.
We've run the contest multiple times, and I actually bring the winners from past years into those sessions to help, those that are interested in, participating in that particular year's contest. So it builds, right? This gets back to that workforce
better and better
upskill.
over time.
You got it. You got it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so they I know what I wanted to write here. I apologize. You basically crafted a one-page, I'll call it business plan, right? So effectively you created a template that said you've got to be able to fill these boxes in, and you have to fill them in a credible way so that you can prepare a pitch in front of this group of judges. And then they're judging on what? The viability of it, their personal interest in it. Is there a scoring rubric of some kind? And do you have to coach the judges who I may be making an assumption that they're executive members, but how do you do that part of the judging? Because I find that can be sometimes tricky.
It is tricky, but this gets back to your stakeholder question, right? So the executive, the leadership team of the business all needs to be on board with complete commitment from our, the head of the business, which he was all in and so supportive of. The judging panel is that leadership team. Right. So we're now all accountable to seeing these ideas through because we're the judging panel. That's, picking the winner. And yes, it was a rubric on 4 different categories. So it was innovation, what's the creative thinking? Are they showing forward thought? Viability, could this get up in 12 months? Right. Does the revenue, generating projections feel and are they valid from that perspective as well? So it's not only viability from a delivery perspective, but viability from, actual revenue generation or savings. Yeah.
Reasonable.
Yeah. But the first one was, are they solving a problem worth solving? Right. We could say it could save us $250,000, but is that the right problem to solve where we are, today in the business and whatnot? So
problem desirability, like, is this a real thing? Does it actually matter? Innovation, kind of creativity. Is there something here net new we haven't heard of? We're not just, sort of beating the proverbial dead horse. And then viability, both from could we get this up and running in 12 months? Like, is it feasible to actually pull it off? And then I guess the other one is, do your back of the napkin Excel spreadsheet projections make any sense?
Sure. That's exactly it. But that's where the stakeholders matter. So it really is a leadership commitment to this because we are going to be using resources to really see these ideas through, and they have to believe in it. They have to believe in those ideas too.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. Okay, so you pick a winner or winners, let's say, right? Because it can be, again, maybe, I don't know if you're doing 2 every time you do the contest or more. Well, actually, you said 30 went down to 10, right?
Yes. Yeah. So 10 did the Shark Tank pitch.
Okay. So 30 ideas, and then 10 did the pitch, basically, right? And then so you selected 10. So what was the step 4 with those 10?
Yeah. So, well, first to get to the 30 to the 10, we did the business plan reviews and we limited it. Then we did more coaching. So I did, kind of one-on-one sessions with those teams, provided them feedback. Here's what was interesting to the judging panel. Here's what concerned us, where we're going to want to hear, answers to these types of questions, right, in your pitch. And then also it's a public speaking. Really, yes. And we set a time limit. They had 7 minutes.
7 minutes.
7 minutes. Very cool. So if you're not able to clearly articulate the problem, how you're solving it, and the growth or efficiency that will come from it in 7 minutes, I'm not quite sure there's really something there. Right. So
Right.
this was also kind of an upskilling opportunity for folks that, aren't necessarily in front of an audience or in front of the leadership. So it's an
Right.
exposure opportunity as well.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's so important. Again, we we're lucky enough to be able to work with a lot of folks that are doing that same thing where it's I never get to talk to the C-level folks or the executive level folks. And when I present, my presentations are not, well structured or emotionally appealing. And so the better you can make those pitches, and 7 minutes sounds like a small amount of time, but in my experience, you can say a lot in 7 minutes. And so really getting people to have the confidence to be able to do that and present a thoughtful business case is super powerful.
Yeah. One of my favorite quotes of all time was Winston Churchill wrote a letter to FDR during World War II, and it was really long. At the beginning of the letter, he said, "I'm really sorry I didn't have time to write you a shorter letter."
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Yeah. It's not easy.
It's
It's not
not
easy.
easy. Yeah.
It's very. I mean, we're experiencing it here because we're only on step 4, and we're so I totally get it. But I think that skill of having the confidence to communicate an idea that you've condensed down into its key points after you've got received coaching and training and mentorship from yourself and I expect others can really serve them well, even if they don't win.
Hmm.
It really can serve them well for, well, now I know how to communicate to leadership. Now we can change how we do these presentations. So it's not 60 minutes of nonsensical numbers with no validation of the problem. So to me, that's a very powerful idea of being able to get in front of a group, and get in front of a panel of judges, let's say, or executive leaders and present an idea properly in 7 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
So 30 ideas, 10. So it sounds like 30 ideas, 10 get to pitch.
Yes, that's right.
Right. And then it's really the selection process, right? So we sort of covered the selection. It's clear we've smushed the contest, the pitch. How long does the contest run for you say we're looking for ideas? How much time do you go before you've selected the 10 that are going to go to pitch?
Yeah. So we give them about 6 weeks,
Okay.
um, which is funny because the first contest, we got a lot of pushback that 6 weeks wasn't enough time.
I would guess so. I'm surprised you said 6 weeks, actually. So that's
But it
really
was one
interesting.
of those things where it's amazing what a deadline can do to get people moving. And now that this is a repeated contest, people are brewing on ideas year round. And I get ideas into my inbox year round, which is awesome because people aren't waiting for the contest.
Okay. And just very quickly, this is so messy but interesting. How long did step 2 take? Because you did talk about it before, about how do we align the stakeholders, get people motivated. I mean, I think you said just before about a year to get everybody kind of, I know a lot of work went into this and we're condensing it into 4 bullet points, but this was about a year to get everybody kind of up and running with the strategy, find those strategic opportunity areas.
Yes. So it was about a year from, setting that large growth goal to realizing, okay, we got to do something new, to really looking at the markets we serve today, what we can do to maximize growth in those markets, and what are new client segments, jurisdictions, et cetera, that we should really start to focus in on. That
Right.
was probably about 4 to 6 months. And then communicating that out to the organization. And there was a process of iterating around, like, how are we going to get buy-in from the
Right.
organization and commitment to do what's going to be difficult and change. And then the idea of the contest came out.
Okay.
So, but aligning everyone, Ben, the secret there is that has to happen every day. It
Of
still
course.
has to happen today because things change around you. Um, whether that be, new client relationships having new demands on you, or regulatory changes,
Of course.
technology
Yeah.
changes, et cetera.
Yeah. No, yeah, that never, you don't get to check that one off the list and be like, we never have to keep aligning.
You
So
got it.
I totally get that one. Okay. So from 30 ideas, 10 pitches, 2 selected is what you've done so far. What's the next step after that?
Yep. So once the two are selected, we start to bring them into the experimentation process where we use the next month or so to really outline what are those key milestones that we need to see in the next 6 months in order to keep moving forward or not. And then once we have those milestones, the teams go and we have a steering committee with executive leadership around them to help create visibility and support, right, of where they might be hitting hurdles internally mostly.
These are the key milestones we have to validate over the next 6 months to keep justifying our investment in this idea.
Yep.
Uh, and then a steering committee. How often does that steering committee review these things? Meet? What's that cadence of, for them to be involved in checking up on things, feeling comfortable with them? That's probably also an alignment opportunity. How often is that frequency?
Yeah, so we start monthly. Um, we start monthly. A lot of the reason why, especially in the first few months, is really organizing that final team and
Right.
really starting to help them understand, like, hey, you're going to need to engage our legal partners, our procurement partners, if there's any type of vendor or third party. So there's
Right.
there's those outside of the kind of business realm, like, the business itself that need to be
Yeah.
involved. So we try and
All the
you got
supporting
it.
infrastructure.
You
Yeah.
got it.
Okay. Got it. And what level of training support do you provide on the experimentation process? Because I would imagine for many of these folks, this idea of, you mean I got to go interview somebody, I got to build a prototype first, is maybe very new or uncomfortable. And again, that's a leading question perhaps, but is that true? And then what sort of level of support do you provide? Because you certainly would not say, all right, good luck, 6 months, check in monthly.
No, definitely not. So there's someone on my team that's assigned to the experimentation team that really provides that guidance and is a part of the team, playing the
Okay.
role in helping them move through the process. And I coach the folks that work for me. We need to maintain that third party kind of non-biased point of
Yes.
view,
Yep.
because pride of ownership will exist as it
Yes,
should,
it will.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but we need to figure out if we need to invest here. And that's, why those milestones are super important. Are we meeting the
Right.
milestones or not? And then having that person on the team that can really kind of raise their hand and say, this one's really exciting. There's really something here, or we're
Right.
learning a lot and it's not pointing to spend more money.
Right. Do you find, Ali, that the team? I love that comment on pride of ownership. Do you find that the teams are super honest on a scale of 1 to 10? How honest are the teams, especially if the person who had this idea is still on the team? They're like, we're bought in, we're just completely looking at this, from evidence base, or how bought in pride of ownership are they?
It really depends. It really depends. I find that on the teams that are focused on the growth, they have pride of ownership, but they're much more eyes wide open and ears wide open
Right.
to that
Right.
market feedback. And so pivoting there, it seems to be a bit more natural.
Right.
Um, on the efficiency side, we have teams that in many cases do that work day to day, where
Yeah,
they
they're the experts
see,
in that space.
yeah, where
Yeah,
they see the opportunity. So that one's a little bit harder.
right. Yeah, that makes total sense to me. Okay, so that this process experimentation is about 6 months.
Hmm.
Okay, and then you move into what's the next step from here then? And I guess I'm curious about the next step, but also, has anything completely died in this step? I know you've only run this process perhaps sort of one real cycle. So, do you expect things to die here, or is it more keep pivoting till you come up with something, or is there a comfort level recognizing that we might not get anything and we might not get anything after the full 6 months?
Sure. So there have been things that have died here, right? Fill, kill. I would say there's been more that has been parked,
Okay.
where the timing just was not the right timing. Either it was too early, or we needed some kind of technical or solution iteration in the core to be able to really enable that. So it was actually learning to filter back to the core to say, here we should be aware of this from a, you know, product delivery roadmap perspective, and it really should be handled here rather than being its own standalone thing,
Right.
right?
Right. And so that would be of the two things that are selected again. So then they start that because again, the two feels like a small number. Actually, let's park the efficiency one for a moment, just the growth one.
Mm-hmm.
That's one idea. But in that idea, I imagine as they run experiments, new ideas spin off
You
from
got it.
that.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So that's what you're describing there is a sort of we have an idea, we have a pitch. Now we got to go really prove it all. Oh, we learned this, we learned that. Oh, we're shifting that. Oh, we're going to park that idea. And they're just trying to navigate their way to some form of truth.
Yes. So, and Ben, to your point, we've had, one idea really go through the process from the contest, but that hasn't been the only ideas that have come through. We've taken ideas through experimentation that didn't necessarily come out of the contest, right? Or didn't win, and we've picked up since.
Okay, so you are picking, yeah, there's more of a portfolio approach here than just saying two selected. Okay, that's an important point to make because the funnel isn't really 30, 10, 2 to go into this process. The funnel might be 30, 10, 2, and then we're adding a whole bunch of other ones to put through the funnel.
Yeah, it's definitely a living, breathing funnel. It's not just, when we run the contest, does it reshape itself?
Right. Understood. Okay. So what's step 5? Experimentation process. You get to the end of this process. I'm curious how you define the end and how you think about, okay, what is that next step?
Yeah. So this is really very much specific to what the idea is or what the new business. Um, so in the case that we were talking about from the small community banks, it was we are getting strong market indication that there's very ripe opportunity here, very limited competitive set, and we have all the knowledge and all the technology that's necessary to do this. Really, it's a go. Let's go to market and let's
Right.
sell or not, right? And
Right.
in many ways, in step 4, we're selling, right, to
I
get
was going to
that
ask. Yeah.
feedback. Yeah,
Yeah.
we're starting to build that awareness to get that feedback in. So when you come to this stage, it's what's the implementation, the onboarding. You're really getting into the execution of bringing the customer on.
Right. Have they built the MVP in step 4, Allie, or no?
In most cases, the MVP is outlined and documented in step 4, depending on what technology is needed. It's built or not.
Okay. But your pre-selling is really what we would like we're validating by saying if we build this thing, you will give us money. And they say yes. And step 5 is really that go, no go. Should we commercialize this thing? Yes. And I know that's not on the efficiency side, but on the growth side would be we have enough evidence that we should go build this thing properly and commercialize.
That's right. That's right. This is where, too, you're starting to get much more defined investment dollars that were very
Right.
sure, right? You're much more sure about what that investment is.
Yeah. 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 They have to come back, I would imagine, at this point with look, we've pre-sold this thing for this amount of money. So our business model looks reasonable. We need $100, whatever it is, to go build this thing properly, bring it to market, and get to this stage. It's
Yes.
probably something along those lines.
Yeah, and really, it's a little bit more robust in that it will say, "Here's MVP. We've sold it. We need this to really go implement, but here's the follow-on enhancements to
Right.
that
Okay.
we're proving now, right? And then we're really integrating it to the core operating model at this point.
Right.
So the
Right.
experimentation team is no longer the only ones working this. We got the sales team
Okay.
updated, selling it. We in this particular
Okay.
case.
Oh,
It's a
that's interesting. So the yeah, I know this is one particular case, but the idea here is like the core business, if you will, is engaged because we are now structuring this as a formal product or business unit within SEI.
That's right. And
Yeah,
that's really in the step 4, that's where we're starting to figure out is, does this integrate into the core operating model as a new solution inside of an existing business? Or is this a whole new business that requires
right,
to be separated in order to be successful?
right. Internal or I'll say external, but we know we don't mean external like spinning it out necessarily.
Right.
We mean external like outside of the core
You got it.
of it. Yeah. Okay. Not the cure business, the core business. Helpful if I could type and spell. Okay, so that's step 5. Is there a timeline on step 5, or it's just so dependent on the idea? Because it's really not just go no go. I've mashed something. It's go no go, and then actually execute. So with the one thing that you on the growth side that you put through to now commercialize, what did the time on this step take for you? Because again, part of the playbook is really speeding up this process. And again, if we think about it from contest, if we think about it from the start, not ignoring the alignment part, but that's the effort to get started. You're at 6 weeks plus approximately 6 months plus approximately how much time to sort of get something commercialized. What would be your goal there?
It definitely depends on the idea. In this particular case, I we had, our first paying customer probably 6 months after the go no go, but we've been watching it closely for about 9 months at this point and probably will continue to watch it very closely, to ensure that that pipeline's still being built. We're seeing, throughput from a sales perspective. There are some key milestones in the sales cycle that we want to see, in the onboarding. So it's a continual kind of, my team's still very much
Yeah, it never
embedded
obviously this
there.
never yeah, it never stops because your goal is to make sure this thing really has legs. But 6 months about to first paying customer is a pretty powerful milestone.
Yes, yeah, it was very exciting. I was on vacation when it happened, and I was like, "Oh, I'm so happy I'm checking my email right now."
It's like, yeah, who doesn't check their email on
I know,
vacation?
I
I
know.
think they say they don't. Maybe kudos to them, but I'm constantly working on vacation without the meetings, which is the why the work during vacation is so wonderful. So, okay. So maybe that's the I know this is short. We're almost at time. That's sort of the playbook. Is that a fair approximation, as messy as this is, of the process that you are continuing to now go through?
Yeah, I think, the 5 key steps around, goals, setting those big targets, alignment of the people, generating the ideas, whether that's through a contest to align the organization, and executing on the experiment to get to a go no go. That's in a nutshell.
Yeah, we condensed 3 years of very hard work by many people into 5 steps.
Yes,
But
yeah.
if we were to try to, put this so if I go back to the title, so how did you and SEI increase decision speed? You know, what would you say there compared to how SEI was operating before, in terms of speed improvement? And, you know, how do we fill some of these X's in?
Sure. Yeah. So I think from a speed decision standpoint, it's it's really about making the decision in a risk adjusted way, if that's fair, right? So it's not about the decision and saying we're full bore in, like
I
no
hear
turning back, right? So I think it increased the speed because we're making a smaller decision.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Like, we're not making a decision to invest $10 million in a new business.
Exactly.
Uh, and so maybe this is not even the right title. And then let's talk about the pipeline, because I think at some point you had said, a few things. How many fundable ideas are you trying to generate per year?
Yeah. So we want to try and run 3 experiments a year, right? And that's for a couple reasons, right? It's obviously, um, we want to give each experiment the right resource to
Right.
really have a shot. right? So
Yes,
we
yes,
can't overextend, um, and we also are very disciplined in the ideas that make it through. Right, going back to that
right,
strategic alignment and opportunity cost decision. That so I would say we've gone from 0 experiments to 3 experiments
right,
a
per
year.
year, right,
And that's probably over the last 2 years or so, because that first year was really getting us going, and we've had, um, one completely go to market and generate new revenue and is showing really good progress to be, a real contributor to the business,
right.
which is wonderful.
Right. Got it. Yeah, that makes total sense. And I think getting that cadence is good. We will probably reshape the title of this
Yeah,
a
I think
little
that's
bit
a
on the
good idea.
playbook side, which is totally fine. That's why we do it in real time and figure out. But Ali, we're at time. Thank you so much. That was super fascinating. I love the process. I know, having worked in similar environments, how hard it is to get that done, how hard it is to drive the commitment around growth innovation. But I also know it works. And if it looks like you're really building this repeatable playbook for pulling it off. And then those businesses might be the next $1 billion SEI businesses, which would be amazing to see. So congrats on that. And thank you for the conversation and humoring me as we work through a playbook together.
Oh, Ben, thank you for having me. You did a phenomenal job typing on the
Oh,
fly as
I'll take
quickly
it.
as we were going through that. And hey, good things don't come easy. And so I feel blessed to have the role I have and to be doing what I'm doing here at SEI.
Yeah, very cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you.